The train screamed as it slowed, iron against iron, steam hissing like a warning that could still be ignored. She stood before the smudged window, clutching her small leather bag, heart pounding harder with every jerk of the carriage. This was the end of the line. This was where she stepped off into a life she had never seen, into the arms of a man she had never met, except through letters written in careful, modest words. Before we go any further into this story of promises, secrets, and a love tested by truth, remember to subscribe to our channel and share this story with your friends, because some tales deserve to be heard, felt, and remembered. She had imagined him as the letters described, a poor farmer with rough hands, honest eyes, and land so tired it barely fed him. She had imagined herself saving him with her youth, her strength, her willingness to endure hardship for the sake of belonging somewhere. What she did not imagine was that the lie went in the other direction entirely. The platform was small, dust-covered, surrounded by fields that stretched wide under a burning sky. A handful of people waited, men in hats, women with children clinging to their skirts, but only one man stepped forward when she descended. He removed his hat, holding it respectfully to his chest, and she noticed his posture first, straight, confident, not the posture of a man beaten down by poverty. "Miss Eleanor Wright?" he asked. Her name sounded strange here, carried on his deep, calm voice. She nodded, suddenly unsure. "I'm Thomas Hale," he said. "Welcome." That was all. No gushing, no nervous rambling, just welcome. She followed him, her eyes scanning the land. The wagon waiting nearby was sturdy, well kept. The horse was strong, glossy. None of it matched the image she had carried across hundreds of miles. They rode in silence at first, dust trailing behind them. Eleanor's mind raced. Perhaps he borrowed these things. Perhaps appearances were deceptive. She had learned long ago not to judge by first impressions. Still, as the farm came into view, her breath caught. It wasn't a shack. It wasn't a failing plot of dirt clawed from desperation. It was vast. Acres upon acres of fertile land rolled out before them, fenced, organized, alive. A large farmhouse stood at the center, white and solid, with barns and silos beyond it. Workers moved in the distance, purposeful and many. She turned to him, unable to hide it. This is your farm?" He met her gaze, something unreadable flickering across his face. "Yes, but your letters," she began, then stopped herself. He guided the wagon onward. "We'll talk inside." The house smelled of clean wood and fresh bread. Sunlight poured through wide windows. This was no poor man's home. Eleanor felt her chest tighten, not with relief, but with betrayal. "I don't understand," she said finally, standing near the doorway like a guest instead of a bride. "You said you struggled. You said you could barely keep the land." Thomas leaned against the table, folding his arms. "I said I lived simply. I said I didn't waste. I never said I was destitute." "That's not the same thing," she replied, voice shaking. "You let me believe you needed saving." A shadow crossed his face then. "I needed honesty." She laughed bitterly. "From me? From the world," he said. "From anyone who would see what I own before they see who I am." The truth came slowly. He owned not just this farm, but neighboring lands. He employed dozens. He supplied grain across the county. And yet, every woman he courted locally saw only his wealth. None asked about his values, his loneliness, his nights spent staring at ceilings too high for one man's silence. "So you lied," she said. "I withheld," he corrected quietly. "Because when I said poor farmer, women listened to my words. When I said successful landowner, they listened to my money." Eleanor sank into a chair, the weight of it pressing down on her. She had crossed a continent believing she was choosing hardship with dignity. Now she stood in abundance she hadn't asked for, tied to a man she didn't know. "I didn't come here for riches," she said softly. "I came because I thought we were equals." Thomas nodded. "Then let us be." Days passed, tense and careful. Eleanor insisted on working, refusing the comforts offered too easily. She rose before dawn, learned the rhythm of the farm, spoke with workers who respected Thomas not out of fear, but loyalty. Slowly she saw him, not as a wealthy man hiding behind modest words, but as someone burdened by responsibility, by expectations, by the fear that love could never be separated from ownership. At night, they spoke more, about her past, about his, about why he had chosen a mail-order bride instead of courting nearby, about why she had answered an ad written by a man who described himself as having little but honesty. The first chapter of her journey ended not with love, but with understanding uneasy and incomplete, hanging between them like a bridge still under construction. The wind changed with the season, and with it, the farm seemed to breathe differently. Eleanor had stopped feeling like a visitor. The land no longer intimidated her. She knew which fields flooded after heavy rain, which workers joked to hide grief, which horses needed gentler hands. She had carved a place for herself not through wealth, but through effort. Thomas watched her from a distance at first. He had learned long ago not to expect gratitude from the world, but Eleanor never thanked him for comfort. She earned it, and that unsettled him in ways money never could. One evening, a letter arrived bearing a seal Eleanor recognized all too well. Her past, her family, the life she had left behind in desperation. Thomas noticed the way her hands trembled. "You don't have to stay," he said quietly when she showed him the letter. "Not out of obligation, not out of pride." She met his eyes. "I know." That night they spoke honestly for the first time without defenses. Eleanor admitted her fear, that if she stayed, people would say she married for wealth, that she would lose the one thing she believed she still owned, her integrity. Thomas confessed his own shame, that he had tested her without her consent, that his secrecy had been a form of control, even if born from hurt. "I didn't want to be chosen for my land," he said, "but I also didn't give you the choice to know the truth." Silence stretched between them, heavy but clean. "I stayed," Eleanor said finally, "because of how you live, not what you own." Weeks later, a fire broke out in the eastern fields, sparked by lightning. Workers rushed. Thomas rode hard through smoke and flame. Eleanor followed, ignoring orders to stay back. Side by side, they fought the fire until dawn broke and rain finally came. When it was over, they stood covered in ash, exhausted, alive. Something shifted then. Not romance born of comfort, but trust forged under pressure. Word spread quickly through the county about the mail-order bride who worked like a seasoned farmer, who stood beside Thomas Hale not as decoration but as partner. Some whispered envy, some mocked. Eleanor learned to let it pass. One night, Thomas placed a small wooden box before her. Inside was not jewelry, not deeds, but the original advertisement she had answered, folded and worn. "I want you to choose again," he said. "Now that you know everything." Eleanor held the paper, remembering the woman she had been on that train. Afraid, hopeful, willing to love a poor farmer because she believed struggle made people honest. She looked up at him. "I didn't marry a poor farmer," she said. "I married a man afraid of being unloved for the wrong reasons." "And now?" he asked. "Now," she said, taking his hand, "we build something honest, together." Their marriage was quiet, no grand display. The wealth remained, but it no longer defined the story. What people remembered instead was how a woman arrived expecting hardship and found truth, how a man hid his fortune and discovered that love, when chosen freely, was worth more than everything he owned. The night after the fire did not end with rest. Even when the rain finally settled the ash and the workers drifted back to their quarters, sleep refused to come to Eleanor. She lay awake beside the open window, listening to the land breathe again, smelling damp earth and smoke. For the first time since she had arrived, the farm felt wounded and alive. It felt like something she belonged to. Thomas was still awake too. She could hear his steps downstairs long after midnight, the slow, measured pacing of a man whose mind would not quiet. Wealth had never stolen his sleep. Responsibility did. And now something else joined it. Fear, sharp and unfamiliar. Fear of losing what had only just begun. When dawn came, pale and hesitant, Eleanor was already dressed. She tied her hair back, slipped on her boots and stepped outside before the house stirred. The eastern fields lay blackened, scarred like burned skin. She walked them slowly, kneeling to touch the soil, rubbing it between her fingers. Beneath the char it was still rich, still alive. The land, like people, carried wounds without surrendering its future. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Thomas said behind her. She didn't turn. "I wanted to see it clearly, before others tell me what it means." He stepped beside her, boots crunching softly. "It means loss. It also means we replant," she said. "We." The word hung between them, fragile and brave. News of the fire traveled fast, faster than the truth ever did. By noon, neighbors arrived. Not all with help. Some came with concern, others with curiosity thinly veiled as kindness. Eleanor felt their eyes on her, weighing her presence, measuring her worth against the size of the house, the acres beyond it. "She's lucky," someone murmured, not quietly enough. Eleanor heard. Thomas did too. That evening, after the last visitor left, Thomas finally spoke what had been building in his chest. "They will never stop assuming." She faced him calmly. "Then let them assume. We'll keep living." He studied her, searching for bitterness, ambition, regret. He found none, and that frightened him more than accusation ever had. Days turned into weeks. Rebuilding began. Eleanor worked harder than before, not to prove anything, but because the land demanded it. She learned accounts and crop rotation, contracts and supply chains. Thomas had always carried these burdens alone, believing leadership meant solitude. Slowly, reluctantly, he let her in, and with that closeness came tension. One afternoon, Eleanor discovered documents locked in the study, old papers detailing land acquisitions, disputes settled quietly with money instead of justice. She confronted him, holding the truth in trembling hands. "You didn't just inherit this," she said. "You took it." His jaw tightened. "I protected it. At what cost?" she asked. The argument that followed cut deeper than the fire ever had. Eleanor accused him of hiding not just wealth, but power. Thomas accused her of judging a world she had only just entered. Words sharpened. Silences burned. That night Eleanor packed her bag, not because she wanted to leave, but because she needed to know she could. Thomas watched from the doorway, saying nothing. Pride battled panic inside him. He had built his life on control, on preparation. Eleanor was the first thing he could not predict. At dawn, she stood by the gate, bag at her feet. Thomas finally spoke. "If you go, it won't be because you were pushed." She nodded. "And if I stay, it won't be because I was bought." They stood there, the land stretching endlessly around them, the choice as wide and frightening as the horizon. Eleanor set the bag down. "I'm staying," she said. "But things change." He exhaled, something inside him breaking open. "Then I changed too." What followed was not a perfect transformation, but an honest one. Thomas reopened old agreements, renegotiated unfair terms, lost money, gained respect. Eleanor took on a role no one expected, not as a silent wife, but as a voice that questioned, challenged, and steadied. The county began to talk differently, not about what Thomas owned, but about what he was becoming. One winter evening, as snow fell thick and quiet, Thomas handed Eleanor a set of keys. "Half of everything," he said. "Not because you married me, because you built this with me." Tears filled her eyes, not from relief, but from recognition. This was the choice she had crossed the world for. Not comfort, not rescue, but partnership. Their love did not arrive with grand gestures. It grew in shared fatigue, in arguments that ended with understanding, in mornings where neither hid behind fear anymore. Years later, when newcomers asked Eleanor what it was like to arrive believing she would marry a poor farmer, she smiled softly. "I didn't marry poverty," she said. "I married truth after we both learned how to tell it." And so the story lived on, not as a tale of hidden wealth, but as proof that love, when stripped of illusion, becomes something far more powerful than money.